Hello and welcome to Tonalist Painting with M. Francis McCarthy. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and the painting we are doing today is called Near Twilight. It's an 11 by 11. It's one of these paintings I did back in March over the top of some sort of unsuccessful painting, which fortunately I don't recall. And I say fortunately because no one likes having bad paintings around, and I'm quite happy with Near Twilight. Now, this scene I painted before, and it came out looking fairly similar. It has a lot more picking at it. I would say a lot less direct than this scene. And I ended up giving that to a charity as a donation last year, and they haven't contacted me this year, probably because I was crying because I didn't really like the amount they got for the bid, especially compared and contrasted with some of the other garbage in that exhibition that most of it three-dimensional work that went for big bucks. Whatever. This is part of our cross that we bear as an artist. You know, sometimes, especially, I mean, I was a commercial artist, and I know how to create artwork that's going to generate cash and do well in the current marketplace. And I've sort of just, ignore all that now with my landscape painting, working in a mode that's about 100 years out of date. And what can I say? This is the style of art that moves me and that I think is the most prescient and beautiful approach to landscape painting that was ever discovered. And so after running across this tonalism myself, I really had no choice but to start working in this mode. And ultimately, you have to, at least if you're going to do fine art, to me, the distinction between fine art is and commercial art is fine artist does what they have to do, what's inside them, and really doesn't pander to the market at all. You get a lot of people in the fine art market that aren't actually operating that way. They're sort of commercial fine artists, and that's fine. It's fine. We have, I don't know, what, 7 billion of us on this planet, and, we're all going to do things our own way. And especially when it comes to art, no one's hurt. No one has to buy it, and no one has to pay any attention if they don't want to. So, that said, I do sell, a decent amount of paintings, and I do get a good amount of support. But I'm aware that I would do better if I was, especially out here in New Zealand, which is really very inwards looking and not very, I don't know, not very sophisticated when it comes to the kind of art that sells out here. Not to diss my fellow Kiwis, but, this is one of the reasons why I'm putting a lot more efforts into selling work in the US and Europe and places like that, where there's a greater appreciation for traditional work and styles. As a matter of fact, this is such a new country. There's not much appreciation for anything old here, because what few old things they have been used into bits, and they'll tear down an old building here and put up a concrete box without even thinking about it. And that's something that was definitely changing in California when I was living there. A lot of people would fight for the older buildings with the nicer style, and that kind of gets into another issue, which is, these days we put up ugly concrete boxes, to streamline commerce, strictly for commercial interests. And there's so much commerce going on. It's like people have more things and materialism than they could ever actually want or need. At some point, it's got to start turning around, I think, and people need to start, like, why should we put up an ugly building when we could put up something beautiful and enduring that people will appreciate as they're using it and walking by it. And I think the same thing goes for artwork. A lot of times, artwork is. I have no problem with being called a decorative artist. I mean, my work will decorate somebody's home. What other purpose does it serve other than to be something that's in someone's decor? So, that said, I try to inject a lot of other things into the work that is there for people that want to do more than just casually glance at it, and that's what it's about, and that's what a lot of the other tonalists did. I mean, there was a heck of a lot of meaning injected into their work, a lot of feeling compressed in those layers of paint, and I'm pretty much doing the same. So anyway, I went off on a big tangent there, but I don't think this charity's contacting me anymore after seeing how bummed I was by their selling my painting for cheap, and whatever. But I really liked the scene, and so I decided to paint it again. In fact, one of the main themes of this whole pass that I did on the Burn Umber was revisiting old themes, with sort of an eye towards this museum show I have coming up. So, and that's what I've done there, and I still have most of these March paintings, haven't sold them, so they'll be going into the museum show. And I always like to look back, and at the same time I like to look forward too, and then develop and always find new scenes to paint, and that's what I've been busy doing in the studio this week. I've been working on I think 18 new scenes. I've got about 5 left to go. I did 2 yesterday. Sometimes I can get 3 out, especially if it's 2, at least 3 out of just the first color block in, first color pass. If it's 2 5x7s and 1 5x5, I can manage that. That's a lot of work, and it's an interesting phenomenon. That with painting, it's not like I used to be in manufacturing, and you'd basically be doing physical labor for the 8 hours that you signed up for, except for the breaks they give you, and of course your lunch, which was usually a half hour. But painting's not like that. I can't really get into the studio and just paint for a solid 8 hours. I mean, I could if I made a concerted effort to do that, but I don't know if that doesn't really jive with the way that I'm approaching things. I have to sort of come at things from a bit of an angle, and most days I probably get a solid 3 hours of actual painting in, maybe 4, and that's maybe 5 on a really day where everything's humming along. And what you find is you just kind of, I wouldn't say you get exhausted, that's the wrong word, but there's a certain reservoir of art juice inside of you that I think gets tapped. And this wasn't a worry when I was a commercial illustrator, because I'm working for commercial motivations. I'm getting a paycheck, and I didn't even get to put my name on the things that I was doing. So all the credit there was taken by the designer that I basically worked for, and who still has my work on his website and is still putting his name on it. But when you get into crunch periods there, you could grab something off of Google Images and use that as a reference. You could basically do whatever you had to do. I would oftentimes print out photos and illustrate directly on top of them with ink. That certainly wasn't the way to get the best quality of illustration. You always get the best illustration if you draw things and then ink them. But I had a lot of work to do and not a lot of time to do it. Also, I relied very, very heavily on formulas and formulaic approaches to things. And in the business I was in, if you had a success with one thing, like say you had a successful design with Yosemite, then you would just do a version of that for the Grand Canyon. You would do a version of that for Yellowstone. You would do something similar for the San Diego Zoo if you could incorporate elements of that design into something that would sell there. And that took up a bit of the slack of the actual creativity. And I'm glad to be away from that sort of thing. I mean, I certainly enjoyed it at the time. I've always liked working, and I've always been a hard worker. But I feel fortunate that I got out of the commercial art business with my soul intact, and my soul is what I put into my work. So is that a commodity? You bet. I mean, it is a commodity because it's for sale. You can buy it, but it's more than that. I always have my eye well past just generating a sale off my work, because I'm working for, when I'm doing a painting and it's good, that painting's going to make its way through history without me, and it's going to have a history of its own long after I'm gone. And I'm interested in that. It's not even a matter of being famous or being known so much as creating an artifact of consciousness. That's really what I'm about. I'm here, I'm alive, I'm thinking, I'm dreaming, I'm feeling, I'm philosophizing, and all of that's going into the paintings. And these paintings couldn't be done by anyone else. Someone else could copy them, but as I do, for example, in the 25 Days of Tonalism project, but even my copy of another artist's painting is still completely unique. No one else could do it the same way I do. And it's expressing that uniqueness and humanness that interests me as a painter, and is the main motivation for doing fine art. So this has been a pretty good rambly podcast. You guys got a bonus on Friday, so I can see you've been viewing that, and that's awesome. And we did day 25 of 25 Days of Tonalism yesterday, but we're going to have actually day 26 coming up next week, so that'll be like my Saturday, your Friday next week. I can say we're getting close to the end here. Hey, thanks for joining me. Click subscribe if you are digging this channel, and that way you can find me again real easy. And you can also see my work at landscapepainter.co.nz. You can follow my blog there, and also there is a higher resolution image of this painting on the blog, so check that out. And we'll be back next week sometime, so meanwhile, take good care and stay out of trouble.